Good afternoon, class. This is the oral administration and recording for your pre-AP Biology, Genetics and Engineering Unit 9 exam. So, for question 1, meiosis is significant to sexual reproduction. Which statement best explains the significance of meiosis in sexual reproduction? A. Equal numbers of eggs and sperm are produced by meiosis. B. The gametes produced by meiosis allow for cloning of an organism. C. Meiosis ensures offspring produced have the correct number chromosomes. D. Meiosis produces eggs and sperm that are alike. Question 2. During meiosis, homologous chromosomes exchange genetic material. This exchange of genetic material, A, increases the genetic variation. B, reduces the diploid number to the haploid number. C, increases the haploid number to the diploid number. D, reduces the probability of mutations. Question 3. In Holstein cattle, the allele for black hair color, capital B, is dominant over the allele for red hair color, lowercase b, and the allele for polled, capital P, or lacking horns, is dominant over the allele for having horns, lowercase p. What is the expected phenotypic ratio of the offspring of a capital B, lowercase b, capital B, lowercase p, by capital B, lowercase b, capital P, lowercase b, cross if the allele sort independently? A, 16 black polled, 0 black horn, 0 red polled, 0 red horn. B, 12 black polled, 0 black horned, 0 red polled, 4 red horn. C, 4 black polled, 4 black horn, 4 red polled, 4 red horn. D, 9 black polled, 3 black horn, 3 red polled, and 1 red horn. Question 4. As a fertilized egg divides, the cells differentiate because they, A, contain a lipid bilayer, B, can clump together, C, metabolize sugars rapidly, D, have specific genes activated. Question 5. Sexual reproduction in animal depends on the production of gametes. Which of these processes produces gametes in animals? A, mitosis, B, fertilization, C, meiosis, D, binary fission. Question 6. Chickens can have different types of feathers. Frizzled feathers curl towards a chicken's head. Assume that feather type is determined by a single gene and that the allele for frizzled feathers is dominant over the allele for straight feathers. In a cross between two chickens with straight feathers, what percentage of the offspring can be expected to have frizzled feathers? A, 0%, B, 25%, C, 50%, D, 100%. Question 7. In the 1860s, Gregor Mendel performed numerous dihybrid crosses between pea plants. Dihybrid crosses involve the study of the inheritance patterns related to two different traits. In guinea pigs, the allele for black fur, capital B, is dominant over the allele for brown fur, lowercase b, and the allele for short fur, capital F, is dominant over the allele for long fur, lowercase f. What percentage of the offspring from a cross would be expected to be heterozygous for both traits? A, 0%, B, 25%, C, 50%, D, 100%. Question 8. In 1917, biologist Thomas Hunt Morgan conducted studies in which he placed Vanessa urtica and Vanessa or caterpillars under red, green, or blue light, while other caterpillars were kept in the dark. When the caterpillars developed into butterflies, their wings showed dramatic differences. Exposure to red light resulted in bright colored wings, while exposure to green light resulted in dark colored wings. Blue light and no light led to pale colored wings. This example provides evidence that A. UV rays can injure caterpillars. B. The butterflies have dominant traits. C. Wing color is an inherited trait for butterflies. D. The environment can influence gene expression. Question 9. Based on the karyotype, which of the following would be a reasonable statement about the production of gametes in this individual? A. During metaphase 2 of meiosis, each cell has 23 chromosomes and 46 chromatids. B. At the end of the synthesis phase during interphase, each cell has 92 chromosomes. C. By the end of cellular division by mitosis, each gamete has 23 pairs of homologous chromosomes. D. The last step of meiosis is cytokinesis that results in 4 gamete cells, each having 46 chromosomes. Question 10. The karyotype above shows 23 pairs of chromosomes. Describe the effect of having either one more chromosome added to one of the pairs or having one of the chromosomes above missing. Give an example. Question 11. From a single fertilized ovum undergoing a series of rapid cell divisions, a human infant develops. The embryonic cells become specialized for a variety of functions. Which of these statements best describes how different cell types develop? A. Each cell type contains only the active parts of the DNA needed for that cell. B. Each cell type only has one chromosome containing the DNA needed for that cell type. C. Each cell has an identical copy of DNA with enzymes controlling the expression of specific genes, leading to a variety of cells. D. Each cell has multiple copies of DNA that are affected in different ways by the environment to change the function of the cell at regular intervals. Question 12. In seals, whisker length has 2 alleles. The dominant allele, capital L, codes for long whiskers, and the recessive allele, lowercase l, codes for short whiskers. Which of the following best represents a cross between 2 long-whiskered heterozygous seals? A. Capital L, lowercase l, by capital L, lowercase l. B. Capital L, by capital L, lowercase l. C. Capital L, by capital L. D. Capital L, lowercase l, by capital L. Question 13. A freckled, brown-eyed human, capital F, capital B, is crossed with a non-freckled, non-brown-eyed human, lowercase f, lowercase b, lowercase b. What percentage of the offspring can be expected to be freckled? 0%, B 25%, C 50%, D 100%. Question 14. All of the following reasons for regulation of gene expression in eukaryotes except A. Cell differentiation, B. Embryonic development, C. Expression of every gene, D. Cell repair and replacement. Question 15. Facial dimples and free earlobes are both considered dominant human traits. What are the expected phenotypes of offspring of a female with dimples and free earlobes, capital D, capital F, lowercase f, and a male with no dimples and attached earlobes, lowercase d, lowercase f, lowercase f? A. 50% with dimples and free earlobes and 50% with dimples and attached earlobes. B. 50% with dimples and free earlobes and 50% with no dimples and attached earlobes. C. 75% with dimples and free earlobes and 25% no dimples and attached earlobes. D, 75% with dimples and attached earlobes, and 25% with no dimples and free earlobes. Question 16. Human body cells each have 46 chromosomes in their nuclei. Meiosis is necessary in order to ensure that each gamete produced in the human body has A, 12 chromosomes, B, 23 chromosomes, C, 46 chromosomes, D, 92 chromosomes. Questions 17 to 18. A biology student was doing a project on cystic fibrosis, a fairly common genetic condition that affects some members of her family. The student was interested in the inheritance pattern of the trait. The incidence of cystic fibrosis in student's family over the last 3 generations is shown. A. Claim cystic fibrosis is autosomal dominant. Evidence individual 6 does not have cystic fibrosis and was still able to pass it along to one of his children. B. Claim cystic fibrosis is autosomal dominant. Evidence individual 4 has cystic fibrosis that she inherited from her father. C. Claim cystic fibrosis is autosomal recessive. Evidence individual 11 has cystic fibrosis but her parents do not. D. Claim cystic fibrosis is almost autosomal recessive. Evidence individual 8 has cystic fibrosis that he inherited from his mother. Question 18. If individual 11 reproduces with a male who is a carrier for cystic fibrosis, which of the following is the most accurate prediction of how the phenotypes of their children? A. All of their children will be carriers of cystic fibrosis. B. Half of their children will be carriers and half of their children will have cystic fibrosis. C. 1/4 of their children will have cystic fibrosis and 3/4 of their children will be carriers. D. None of their children will have cystic fibrosis, but all of them will be carriers. Question 19. In snapdragons, capital R represents red flowers and lowercase r represents white flowers. In the cross, capital R, by little r, all of the offspring have pink flowers. Which pattern of inheritance is illustrated by this cross? A. Incomplete dominance. B. Multiple alleles. C. Recessiveness. D. Polygenic inheritance. Question 20. Gene expression allows an organism to control cellular structure and function as necessary for survival in a changing environment. Which of the following is an example of gene expression as a regulated process? A. Pancreatic cells controlling the release of insulin to regulate blood glucose levels. B. Epithelial cells repairing due to damage from a sharp object. C. Plant cells storing water in vacuoles when it rains after a period of drought. D. All of the above. Question 21. A rabbit breeder repeatedly mates a gray, red-eyed rabbit, capital G, lowercase b, with a white, black-eyed rabbit, lowercase g, capital B, ? In order to assure the breeder that both parents are homozygous for their traits, what percentage of their offspring would need to be gray and have black eyes? A. 75%, B. 25%, C. 0%, D. 100%. Question 22. The long, sharp spines of a bougainvillea plant develop in places and clusters of flowers because the environment around the plant. Environmental factors most likely affect cell differentiation during development by A. Altering the levels of regulatory molecules in the cell. B. Acting randomly on genes that regulate differentiation. C. Causing practically all cells to stop transcription. D. Changing the base sequence of mRNA molecules. Open-ended question 23. Genetically modified crops have been developed that produce a protein that makes the plants resistant to insect pests. Other genetic modifications make the crops more resistant to chemicals that kill plants, herbicides. A. Describe 2 potential biological risks of large-scale cultivation and use of such genetically modified plants. B. For each of the risks you describe in Part A, propose a practical approach for reducing the risk. Thank you. Please make sure to pause or go back to any questions that you want to re-listen to. Thank you and good luck.